What's going on? Well, hello everyone. Hope you are doing well today, April 22nd. It's almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday afternoon. Oh, no, sorry, Wednesday afternoon, Chicago Wednesday night. Welcome to Hola America podcast, where I'm going to discuss more of the Cathy O'Brien story. Now, this video that I've got is 3 hours and 38 minutes, but I'm going to break it up into several pieces because we just can't hang out that long today, okay? Now, this video is very old, very grainy. Sometimes we have white noise. It's very unscripted, you can tell. This one has Mark Phillips, the gentleman that saved Cathy and her daughter from the sex trafficking ring that she was in, okay? So first order business, my studio, got 2 dogs, okay? They make all kinds of noises. They do their thing. They're free range. I don't lock my kids up. You don't lock your kids up. Dogs around the neighborhood bark, and they get them up riled up. And we got a train over there that comes through, and then we have sometimes deliveries that come to the door. So at some point in time, you're going to hear a dog bark. You're going to hear a train go choo-choo. You might even hear frogs croaking because we got frogs everywhere and on the land here because it's been so wet. So there'll be a lot of interruptions because I'm a studio of 1 and it's not soundproof, okay? I'm not that big yet, but with your help, I might get that big. If you like, share, and follow, I'd appreciate it. So, Cathy O'Brien, I want to say this is one of her first interviews that she had with Mark Phillips at her side. They had a diary. A little back history is that she talks about how when you have traumatic events as a child, you tend to block them out, okay? When Mark found out what was going on and rescued her and her daughter, he took them back to where they could relive the trauma, be able to verbalize it, put it down in a notebook. She's got photogenic memory. She remembers everything, and it starts the healing process. Unfortunately, Mark died a few years ago. So now when she does interviews, she's by herself, but she does remember him. But you can see the relationship between the two of them. When she looks at him, when they're standing next to each other, there was a very deep trust factor, love, if you will, because this man saved her and her daughter from horrific life. It's a miracle that she lasted as long as she did, because normally after 10 or 15 years, they're done with you. So she's able to talk about this. And I do want to mention at the very beginning, she went to many court houses, bought up many court cases, but they wouldn't hold anybody accountable because they said it was a matter of national security because of all the high-profile people like presidents, vice presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, congressmen, senators, celebrities, all were involved with her, her daughter, and other women that they were trafficked with, that it would be a matter of national security. No, it would be a matter of national security. It would be a matter of them losing their power, which why nobody was held accountable. But she has never been sued, never been held for libel, never been held for defamation in all the years she's been talking about this. And she names some big people, powerful politicians. I'm telling you. And she's never been sued for it. So you tell me who's telling the truth here. Because if they would have sued her, and she has all the documents, she has books that shows dates and times and what she delivered as far as drugs went, and what happened to her and her daughter, who she was with, who bought her, who took her, how they got there, all that stuff. She's got it all. She put it all down in a diary. She's got several books that Mark had, and she's got the receipts. So no one sued her, because they knew if they did, they'd open up a can of worms and they'd all go down as they need to. Just like the bastards that are in D.C. right now holding the names of the slush fund that they're using and dipping their hands into. They need to be held accountable as well. And that may be coming. So we're going to start off with this, okay? This is John, I want to say it's Jankovic, John Jankovic, that's going to be speaking here, doing the interview with them. And it's her and Mark Phillips. Now, this is going to be a little lengthy here in the beginning. It's Vuk Jankovic. We're going to get him started.
My investigation report by now, by working on various topics. One of them was Kurt Wilhelm topics, which took 7 years of my life. And
I'm trying to get it to where...
reality of World War II.
There you go.
Cover-up.
And I may appear in and out, guys.
Criminal. He also made a big career. Mind control programming also made my interest. And I'm very delightful today, ladies and gentlemen, to present you people the victim of the program, Cathy, who I'm enjoying today her hospitality in her sweet home in Tennessee, and Mark Phillips as the person who saved Cathy's life. And my very first question is to Cathy O'Brien to tell us a few words about when she gets involved in that MK project, and how old you were there when you started with that.
I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family, and my father was sexually abusing me from as far back as I can remember, and he often bragged that he was substituting his penis for my mother's nipple while I was still an infant. And my father had created a dissociative identity disorder by his sexual abuse. Dissociative identity disorder used to be called multiple personality disorder, and it's defined as the mind-sane defense to trauma that's too horrible to comprehend. Even though I couldn't know that what my father was doing to me was wrong, nevertheless, the pain and suffocation that I suffered from his sexual abuse was horrific enough to create the multiple personality disorder. And it was the multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, as it's more aptly called now, is why I was a chosen one, or a prime candidate for the government CIA MK Ultra mind control project. My compartmentalization of memory was something that they were very much interested in. And by the time I was 6 years old, my father had been using me in child pornography and was caught sending this child pornography through the U.S. mails. When this happened, he was approached by the head of the local Michigan mafia, who was also heavily involved in Michigan politics and U.S. politics, Gerald Ford, the same Gerald Ford that went on to become president of the United States. Gerald Ford came to my father and offered him immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into the project. My father thought it was a wonderful idea. He felt like the government sanctioned his child abuse, and he went ahead and sold me into the CIA's mind control project.
Tell me something. I was talking with various people about Gerald Ford, and then I was like discussing with various people on that topic. What is your, if you will say, proves that Gerald Ford could be involved in child pornography and being a member of organized crime? Is there any significant proof that you know of or you can recall of? Because you was following his career, you met him in even your 20s, and when you was 30 even, Gerald Ford. How do you know about his career of being so?
Gerald Ford, if I might introduce this in, Gerald Ford has got a reputation among members of law enforcement, Park Service, even we understand persons who have contributed information from the Secret Service and the Treasury Department, have all made comments to certain members of Congress with regards to Gerald Ford's activities and his proclivity to some really strange and bizarre sexual habits. It's been well known throughout the elite inner social circles in Washington, D.C. and about that Gerald Ford has been involved with organized crime since his very beginnings in politics. You know, his wife, Betty Ford, became a chronic drug and alcohol abuser, And as a matter of fact, he capitalized on that by opening up what is known as the Betty Ford Center in Palm Springs, which supposedly and does treat alcohol and drug addictions in the stars and the elite social persons, both in the United States and abroad. But Gerald Ford's reputation, although not established certainly by Cathy with photographs of him with children or adults or anyone else, his reputation is extraordinarily well documented and well known by a lot of politicians and certainly law enforcement that has come forward with supporting documentation.
When you're talking about supporting documentation, are we able to get some information on that or to get some copies of that?
We have verbal support from certain members of the federal law enforcement agencies, like, and I'm saying like, not that, but like the FBI, who have agreed in part to testify before Congress if we are able to get a legitimate investigation into Cathy O'Brien's claims. Now, there is an FBI officer by the name, formerly an FBI officer who was head of the office in Los Angeles, California, the FBI's office there. His name is Ted Gunderson. Ted Gunderson has discussed Gerald Ford's reputation and some medical reports that Ted Gunderson is familiar with from clients who have reported being abused by Gerald Ford. So Ted Gunderson is outspoken, he is retired, and he is one of the very few that is able to talk about this at this time.
So obviously I will be able to get him. I know Ted Gunderson very well, and
Sure.
I met him a few occasions, and I will be able to get some more information on that topic.
Yeah,
But
hard proofs are very hard to come by when it concerns a former or president of the United States. It's very difficult to come by hard proofs because as quickly as you display them, they're taken away from you for reasons of national security. So hence the reason that we are unable to provide for your viewing audience hard evidences, because we are using those hard evidences that we have acquired in hopes that we can present them to Congress and have something done very formally on this.
come back to Cathy, to you. You was mentioning that Gerald Ford went to your home and he introduced himself. Was he there in the capacity of how you said member of organized crime, dealing with pornography, and how he get in that time in contact with such sophisticated CIA operations like mind control?
Well, my
Or it was his
father,
private business before to be an organized crime?
it had been his business for some time, which is how my father was doing the child pornography during my earliest years. But my mother was also multi-generational incest-based. She suffered from
I'll be right
dissociative
back.
identity disorder from child sexual abuse. And her brother, my Uncle Bob Tanis, also of the Muskegon, Michigan area, was very much a part of this abuse, and he was definitely a connection between my father and Gerald Ford. My Uncle Bob Tanis was U.S. Air Force intelligence and also claimed to be working for the intelligence arm of the Catholic Vatican, which is the Jesuits.
So in other words, we'll be getting some information from that aspect of the. Mark, why the child abused people? I mean, children like Cathy, were the objects for such mind control, and how you, as an expert, could describe that?
Look, we need to go back in history just a little bit. In the 30s, Adolf Hitler was researching two methods for obtaining control of the world. First of all, through nuclear devices, which would, in essence, destroy the victory of his spoils of victory, and also through mind control. And what Adolf Hitler had discovered was that the children of Northern European witchcraft-based families that were involved in Satanism and other forms of blood trauma, ritualistic type abuse, very commonly found in Catholicism and some other types of Christian belief systems. Um, he found that there was an interesting phenomena that was occurring with the children. The children that had been abused literally since birth had developed some extraordinary senses visually. They had 44 times visual acuity improvement. In other words, they could see practically in the back of their head. He could envision using that one thing alone for his special SS forces. In addition to that, he also found out that these children had developed photographic memories, and along with a host of other psychological as well as psychiatric changes that seem to occur when people are exposed to horrific abuse. He took those studies, or actually had a fellow by the name of Heinrich Himmler, began to delve deeper and deeper into the research until he formulated a plan to literally genetically encode these children through interbreeding among these incest based families. I guess plainly spoken, these people were abused, therefore they abused their own children, and their children abused their children, and you develop generation after generation of these abused children, which of course grow into adults. What we have found is that our government, the United States, became interested in it about the same period of time. Our intelligence officers that were serving in Germany at that time began feeding us information back that Hitler was going to breed a super race. And inside this super race was going to be a nucleus of individuals that Hitler or somebody else could have absolute control over. Now, these people would have high IQs, much higher than the average person, and it was not so much that they were smarter, it's the fact that they had been abused since birth. Cathy O'Brien's IQ is above average.
Okay, guys, so we're gonna stop it right here. Let me do this. Let me transition back, okay, so you can see me. All right, let me get my microphone back here. Okay, so did you hear about what I said about Hitler? Okay, hear about how these people have high IQs, the trauma they suffered as children, and they're able to remember it. They have photogenic memories. Okay, they can see it right there when you talk about it. Okay, and that is true because when you see interviews with BTK, Green River Killer, the Golden State Killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, they visualize as they're talking about their victims, and they can tell you what they're wearing, what they were doing, where they were, what happened, everything, because they've got such high IQ. And every one of those serial killers were abused at some point in their life as a child, and they repressed it. Then they brought it back forward. And like I said, Cathy and Mark have tons of diaries where everything is written down of what happened to her, who she met, what she trafficked, how much money was passed, the conversation, what they were wearing. She's got it all. And like you said, she's got a high IQ because with that trauma, it develops something in your brain. And then you talked about Germany and Hitler. After World War II, it's called Operation Paperclip. And that's where America bought over a ton of German scientists and started this mind control in our military. CIA and the military, very dominant with doing these mind control projects, which they're using today. Look at these celebrities. Look at everybody that's acting weird. They're one way, and then a few months later, they've totally turned another direction. And mind control is triggered by, it could be a color, a sound, a sentence, a word, rain, or the sound of thunder, or wind. It could be anything. So Operation Paperclip brought all these German scientists over, and they continued that Hitler project in America, and it's still going today. That's what's crazy. They're using it for the mass shooters. They're using it for the victims of this trafficking ring. They've got to suppress it, because if they don't suppress it, what's going to happen? They're going to tell somebody. Okay? So let's get back here to what he was saying.
Most of the people that we're dealing with here, their IQs are much higher than average. And this is as a result of not the interbreeding or the multi-generational effect. It has something to do with the abuse that she incurred. Her brain literally was forced to use more and more of itself until she has developed some incredible, but not so incredible characteristics, such as photographic memory.
I got dogs on the
This,
clean them out.
from my perspective, it was like a compartmentalization of memory where the abuse was compartmentalized in a certain part of my brain so that the rest of my mind could function normally as though nothing had happened. And I believe that's why it's termed the mind-sane defense to trauma too horrible to comprehend. But this compartmentalization has amnesic barriers around this photographic memory. And it was this compartmentalization of memory that the government was very much interested in and utilized throughout the Reagan-Bush administration in particular for me to be programmed to carry out specific criminal covert operations, which they wanted kept secret, as well as to deliver messages verbatim to different government leaders that were involved in implementing the New World Order through mind control of the masses.
I have a question. I present your case to the various editors of big magazine in Europe and also editors of the various publishing houses. They found a big interest, but at the same time I've faced quite a skepticism because of the fact that something that is very well known to you and you're talking very spontaneously was a very difficult topic for them to comprehend, and that's why I'm here today to give them more details and more accurate information and details regarding those topics. When you're mentioning that it was used first for sexual purposes, can you tell us the beginning of your sexual abuse and what is your recollection on that? Who was the first abusers that you faced in your childhood, and gradually how it's turned on to your other kind of utility they found for you, which is also sending messages and dealing with drugs?
Well, my primitive behavior had been confused when my father was substituting his penis for my mother's nipple, because my sexual experience went into a realm of innate survival instincts such as eating food would do. And my father was my first sexual abuser. And from there, he prostituted me to various local policemen, local Masons, local politicians, such as U.S. Congressman Guy Vanderjack, who later went on to head the Republican National Committee that put George Bush into the office of president. But my Uncle Bob Tanis was also one of my primary abusers from a very early age.
My next question is the involvement of implementation and how the Nazi came to this country. You was lecturing over 30 times in various communities, including police, right?
Yes. We've spent the last 5 years, Cathy and I have been lecturing with primarily psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health caregivers, and of course state, federal, and as well as local police groups all over the country. We're entitled to teach in 11 states for continuing education credits for these particular persons. And to answer your question about where all these scientists came from, the United States government had in 1947 started a Project Paperclip. Project Paperclip was the importation of Nazi and fascist scientists that had scattered after World War II out of Germany and Italy all over the world. And we were bringing them together and bringing them over here. We had propulsion scientists and we had mind scientists or psychiatrists.
You have in your library, I saw the other day, the book written down about that, right?
Yeah, a lady in Washington, D.C., who's a very prominently well-known reporter for the Washington Post, I believe. Her name is Linda Hunt. She's been a Washington correspondent for many years. She did the actual research into the Freedom of Information archives and actually came up with the information on Project Paperclip. And people like Werner von Braun, the more notable ones that most people know about, propulsion scientists that helped actually build NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, from the ground up. He, along with a lot of other scientists, were brought to this country over a 43-year period of time. And they were secretly placed in our learning institutions, our colleges, universities, excuse me, and into major corporations, research labs, as well as NASA and the Defense Department.
If you mentioned over 42 years, means far behind the World War II.
Yes, yes.
Does it explain some kind of putting these two nations together in a way, Germany and the United States?
I don't think they ever separated. As a matter of fact, I'm not saying this flippantly, but I don't believe that Nazi Germany lost the war. I believe they just had to move their operations from their country to this country.
You mentioned the other day, and it was about to go to this place in the state of Alabama, place where the NASA center is, and the place where you mentioned is a home for a lot of Nazi scientists. What's the name of the place? And
Huntsville, Alabama is the home of the NASA rocket propulsion group of scientists. And NASA is about 100 miles from Nashville, Tennessee, where we are now. And NASA has become the home of an enormous number of German scientists, many of whom have had new identities supplied to them. They've had complete changes done in their histories so that they cannot be found as to who they actually were. Well, most of those scientists that were involved in mind control and rocket propulsion during the 40s and 30s under Hitler's regime are now either dead or they're retired. They're old, very, very old. But their children who took their places are, in fact, working at the facility in Huntsville, Alabama, known as NASA.
but also a lot of work.
Okay, we're going to stop right there because we're getting close to 30 minutes because I want to remove, okay, I want to do this here, transition, let's go back up here, remove this, okay, I want to get back, and I didn't turn my light on either, I'm dark, get back to some of the things that she was talking about here, okay, so she mentioned Gerald Ford, right, she mentioned Gerald Ford. In her other video, she mentioned why Gerald Ford became president. Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission that was investigating the assassination of one president back in the 60s. And Gerald Ford helped hide the evidence that would have incriminated certain said people involved in that assassination with a certain president in the 60s. The head of the CIA was a president that I want to say was 41, President 41. That was head of the CIA at that time, or the FBI, one of the two, that was also involved in that. And he became president because he covered it up. And it was given, that position was given to him, as well it was given to 41. And that's why a lot of times when you hear Cathy talk about saying he was installed, well, honey, they were all installed. They were all installed one way or the other, either through Skull and Bones, we talked about that yesterday, the sororities at colleges. The sororities, what are they good for? Oh, years down the road, they give their buddies good jobs? No, it's years down the road, they become presidents, senators, congressmen, judges, Supreme Court judges, all that stuff, okay? They infiltrate law enforcement down low, and they work their way up, okay? Get into college, become a senator or congressman, and the next thing you know, they're a president from a senator. They're the chosen ones. They're all installed, honey. It wasn't just him. So anyway, Operation Paperclip, the German scientists came over, Huntsville, Alabama, NASA. Anybody know what's in Huntsville, Alabama right now? Anybody know? Anybody have any clue? It's a children's space camp. Isn't that ironic? There's space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, ran by the organization with the 4 letters. And scientists' children are still there, working after Operation Paperclip. And I'm sure their scientists' grandchildren are working there. They're indoctrinated. They've inherited that. There's a space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, owned by a certain organization that has scientists, offspring from Operation Paperclip in World War II. Think about that. Think about that. I don't want to say it because I don't want to get taken down, but this is 31 minutes in. If this isn't eye-opening to you, then I don't know what's going to be, okay? But she goes on further and starts describing stuff of what happened to her and her daughter. And we're going to get to that in the next episode. So this is part 1. I'm going to end it. Thank you so much for spending 31 minutes with me today. I appreciate it. But we got another 30 to 45 minute one coming up after this. Okay, so this is part 1 of the original Cathy Bryan story. We're going to publish part 2 in a little bit after I get done with it, okay? And then tomorrow we'll go to part 3. Now, I do apologize for the video. It's grainy and all that, but you've got to understand. You've got to hear her full story, okay? You got to hear why she has a photographic memory. Trauma. Make sure you exercise other parts of the brain. We only exercise, what, half of our brain? If that much. And she's probably exercising 3/4 of her brain because you put that trauma away and it forces you to hide that in certain parts of the head, and you've got to open up another part. Then when you're able to replace the fog out of that piece, now you've got 1, 2, 3 pieces of the brain that are working. And that's why you're able to remember things photogenically. You're photogenic. You can remember things from years gone by. You can remember colors and sounds and smells and all that because you've suppressed it, and now you're reliving it, and it's like it's right there all over again. That makes any sense. That's why I said a lot of these serial killers can talk about all their victims, and you just tell them a certain what they wore, what time of day it was, how it happened, how it ended. They're reliving it because they've exercising that part of the brain that was brain fog for so long. Okay? So, we're going to end this here, but we're going to be back for part 2 of the original Cathy O'Brien story. Guys, thank you so much for spending time with me. Like, share, follow.